The key landed on the white tablecloth with a quiet, muffled sound. In the middle of 31 people who had gone completely still, it was the loudest thing in the room. That was the moment I understood that my family had been planning this for a long time. Let me go back to the beginning. I am 29 years old. I work as a senior brand strategist for a mid-sized marketing firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I spend my days helping companies figure out who they are and how to say it. The irony of that is not lost on me now. I spent years helping strangers build their identities while I quietly let my own family convince me that mine did not count for much. My condo is on the 14th floor of a building in South End. I bought it 2.5 years ago. I put down every dollar I had saved since I was 22, skipped vacations, drove a car with a broken air conditioner through 2 Carolina summers, and ate more peanut butter than any adult should. When I got the keys, I sat in the empty living room on the floor with a bottle of sparkling water. I couldn't afford champagne that month, and I cried, not sad crying, the kind that comes out when something real finally happens after you have wanted it for so long that you stopped letting yourself want it. I painted every wall myself. I picked out furniture piece by piece over 18 months. I have a small balcony that faces west, and in the evenings the light comes through in long, warm strips across the hardwood floor. I know every sound that building makes, the elevator hum, the pipes settling at 2 in the morning, the neighbor above me who practices guitar on Sunday afternoons. That condo is mine. I knew what it meant to me. What I did not fully understand until that Saturday night in March was what it meant to other people. My brother is 4 years older than me. He had a good job in logistics for almost a decade. Then his company restructured and he was laid off 8 months ago. Around the same time, his marriage ended. He and his wife had been struggling for years, but the job loss cracked something open and they separated in October. He moved into my parents' house in Concord, about 25 minutes outside the city. My parents have a 4-bedroom house. It has always been big enough. I want to be clear about something. I felt for my brother. I genuinely did. Losing a job and a marriage at the same time is devastating, and I never wished that on him. I called him. I checked in. I brought food twice when he was having a rough stretch. Whatever happens next in this story, I need that part to be understood. But there is a difference between sympathy and surrender. My mother has always believed, in that quiet, unspoken way that certain mothers have, that my brother needed more help than I did. Not because he was less capable. Honestly, on paper he was more experienced than me in most things, but because I had always been fine. I handled things. I did not call her crying when problems came up. I solved them and reported back, and somewhere along the way that got translated into me not needing anything. Not needing softness. Not needing consideration. Functioning well became its own punishment. My father is a kind man who has never learned to say no to my mother about anything that matters. He says no to small things, where to eat, which route to take, what color to repaint the hallway, so he feels like a person with opinions. But on the big things, the things with weight, he folds. He has always folded. I used to think that was love. I understand now it was just the path of least resistance, dressed up in a husband's clothes. The dinner was my idea. My parents' 35th wedding anniversary was the 2nd week of March. I booked a private dining room at a restaurant in Uptown that my mother had mentioned wanting to try for 2 years. I organized the guest list, sent invitations, arranged flowers, and paid the deposit. My mother was genuinely touched when I told her. She hugged me longer than usual and said I didn't have to do all that. She was right. I didn't have to, but I wanted to. That's the part that sits with me now. The night of the dinner, I wore a dark green dress I had bought specifically for the occasion. I got there 40 minutes early to check the room setup, make sure the flowers were right, confirm the menu with the events coordinator. By the time guests started arriving, I had already handled 4 small crises, invisibly: a seating conflict, a dietary issue, a centerpiece that had wilted, a cousin who showed up with an extra guest nobody had accounted for. That's what I do. I manage things so that the experience for everyone else feels effortless. My brother arrived with my parents. He looked tired, but he was dressed nicely and he seemed genuinely glad to be out of the house. We hugged. He thanked me for putting the dinner together. I remember thinking he seemed lighter than he had in months. I should have noticed that my mother barely made eye contact with me when she came in. The dinner was beautiful. The food was excellent. My father told a story of how he met my mother for the 35th time, and I still smiled at the right parts because his face, when he tells it, is worth smiling at. People laughed and clinked glasses, and the evening moved the way a good evening should, in that easy, rolling way where no single moment stands out because everything is just right. We were between the main course and dessert when my father stood up. He tapped his glass. The room quieted. I assumed this was the toast I had gently suggested he prepare, the one where he thanked everyone for coming and said something sweet about 35 years. He did say those things. He said them warmly, and people listened, and a few of my aunts pressed hands to their hearts. And then, without any pause or shift in his tone, as though it were simply the next item on a list, he said this, "And we have some wonderful news to share tonight. Our Maya has such a generous heart. She's agreed to open up her home to her brother while he gets himself settled again. Starting next month, Derek will be moving into her condo, and we are just so proud of her for stepping up for family." I heard it. Every word. I processed each one separately, the way you do when language stops making immediate sense and becomes objects you have to examine individually. I had not agreed to that. I had not been asked about it. Not a phone call, not a text, not a conversation that I had somehow misunderstood or misremembered. Nothing. The first I was hearing of this arrangement was in a private dining room with 31 people, with my father's voice wrapped around it like it was already settled and had been for some time. People started clapping. I sat very still. My hands were in my lap. My face did the thing faces sometimes do when the brain has not yet decided what expression to send. A kind of suspended neutrality that probably looked like modesty, like I was simply being humble about my own generosity. Across the table, I could see my aunt watching me. Her hands were not clapping. She was watching my face. My mother was beaming. The clapping faded, and my father sat down, and my brother looked at his plate. Not in a guilty way, in a way that told me he already knew. He had known and said nothing. That landed somewhere specific in my chest. I picked up my water glass. I set it back down. I thought about the mortgage payment I had made 4 days ago. I thought about the closet I had spent an entire weekend organizing. I thought about the west-facing balcony and what it looked like at 6 in the evening when everything went gold. Then I set my napkin on the table and I said quietly and clearly, so only the people immediately around me could hear, "I'm sorry, I think there's been a misunderstanding." My mother's smile did not change, but something behind her eyes shifted. "Sweetheart, this isn't the time," she said. "I haven't agreed to anything," I said. "We can talk about the details later." "There are no details to talk about," I said. "I haven't agreed to this." My voice was still low. I was not making a scene. I was stating a fact the way I would state that a number in a spreadsheet was incorrect, without anger, just with accuracy. I thought maybe that would be enough. I genuinely thought that. My mother reached across the table and closed her hand around my wrist. It was not a gentle gesture. It was the kind of grip that communicates, "Stop, right now. Stop. You're embarrassing this family," she said, and her voice had dropped to something flat and pressurized that I recognized from childhood. That voice meant a door closing. A conversation being shut down before it started. I looked at her hand on my wrist. Then I looked at her. "Let go of me," I said. She did not let go immediately. There was a moment. 4 seconds, maybe 5, where we sat like that, with 30 people in the room and the dessert course on its way and whatever this was stretching between us across the white tablecloth. Then, she let go. But she reached into the small clutch bag on the table in front of her, and she set something down between us. A key. Specifically, the spare key to my condo that I had given her 18 months ago when I had minor surgery and needed someone to check on my place. I had never asked for it back. I had not thought about it in over a year. She had brought it tonight. She had come to my parents' anniversary dinner carrying my key in her purse. The table nearest to us had gone quiet. An uncle across the room was still talking, not yet aware, but the immediate circle of people around us had felt the change in atmosphere, the way people in a restaurant feel it when something at the next table turns. "Derek needs stability," my mother said. "You have space. You have more than you need. That's all this is." "That's my home," I said. "It's a condo. He's your brother. It's my home that I bought, with money I earned. He is not moving in." My brother still had not looked up from his plate. My father cleared his throat. "Let's not do this tonight, ladies." And I remember thinking, you just announced in front of 31 people that I had agreed to give up my home, and now you want to table the discussion because it's becoming inconvenient. I stood up. Not loudly. I did not knock anything over or raise my voice. I picked up my evening bag, pushed my chair back quietly, and I took the key from the tablecloth and put it in my purse. My mother said my name, sharp, the way she said it when I was 9 and had done something wrong. I looked at her. Then I looked at my brother, who had finally raised his eyes. He looked tired and ashamed and something else I could not quite name. "I love you," I said to him, but no. I walked out through the private dining room into the main restaurant. I was aware of my own breathing. I was aware of my own breathing. I was aware of the sound my heels made on the floor. I pushed through the front door into the cold March air, and I stood on the sidewalk and I held my bag with both hands, and I breathed. I did not cry. I want to be accurate about that. I was not on the verge of tears. I was operating in that strange, clear-headed space that sometimes comes after a shock, when everything becomes very simple and very obvious, and you understand things you have been avoiding understanding for a long time. I took out my phone. I scrolled to a contact I had not used in about 8 months, my mother's younger sister. My aunt who lives in Raleigh and practices real estate law, and who has always moved through our family gatherings with the particular energy of someone who loves her family and also sees them clearly. She had been in that room. She had been watching my face when the announcement was made. She picked up on the second ring. "I'm outside," I said. "I know," she said. "I'm coming." She peered through the restaurant's front door 45 seconds later, still holding her cloth napkin, which made me want to laugh despite everything. She looked at me the way she has looked at me since I was small, directly, without softening it, but also without cruelty. "How long has this been planned?" I asked. "I didn't know," she said. "I want you to know that. If I had known before tonight, I would have called you." I believed her. "She has a key to your place?" she asked. "Had," I said. She nodded slowly. She folded the napkin in her hands, which was something she did when she was thinking. "Okay," she said. "Here is what I need you to do. I need you to go home tonight. Don't go back inside. Do not engage with anyone else from this family tonight. Tomorrow morning, call your building's management office first thing and request an emergency lock change. Don't wait. Don't think about it." "Can they actually?" I started. "Your mother had a key. She brought it to a dinner with the apparent intention of transferring it to your brother. That is sufficient reason to change your locks regardless of the legal dimensions. But there are legal dimensions, and I want you to call me at 9 tomorrow morning." I looked at her. "She can't actually make me do this." "No," my aunt said, "she absolutely cannot. But people who believe they have authority over you will act on that belief until they are clearly and legally shown otherwise. We are going to make that very clear." She paused. "Are you okay?" I thought about it honestly. "I'm not sure yet," I said. She put her hand briefly on my arm. "Go home. Lock your door. I'll handle the rest of tonight." I took a car home. I sat in the back seat watching the lights of Uptown pass, and I thought about the 30 people in that room and what they were saying right now. I thought about my father's voice wrapping those words in warmth, in pride, in the language of my own generosity. I thought about how many of them believed it. How many of them left that dinner thinking I was a good daughter, a generous sister, a person who opened her home. How many of them would have had no reason to think otherwise if I had sat quietly and said nothing. I thought about how close I had been to doing exactly that. I got home. I stood in my living room in the dark for a moment before I turned the lights on. I walked to the balcony door and looked out at the city. It was late enough that the traffic had thinned. Down below, the street was mostly quiet. A couple walked a dog. A delivery truck idled at a corner. I was still here. It was still mine. I changed out of my dress, made tea, and sat on my couch with my phone face down on the cushion beside me. I knew there were messages coming. I let them come without reading them. I called the management office at 8:15 the next morning. The building manager was understanding and thorough. A locksmith came at 11. I watched the cylinder come out of my front door and a new one go in, and I stood there thinking about how such a small mechanical thing can mean so much. At 9, I had called my aunt. She talked for 20 minutes, and I listened. She explained what I could do and what I should document and what mattered legally and what did not. She was clear and direct and efficient. At the end, she said, "Your mother loves you." I genuinely believe that. But love without boundaries is just another word for access. You have every right to protect what is yours. I wrote that down. The messages came all that day and into the next. My mother called 4 times before switching to texts. The texts started disappointed and moved to hurt, and then, by Sunday evening, to something that read more like anger dressed up as concern. My father texted once, "Can we talk? Your mother is very upset." My brother did not contact me until Monday afternoon. His message was 3 sentences. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't know she was going to do that at the dinner. I'm sorry." I read that message several times. I believed him. I also knew that the believing it and the acting on it were 2 different things. I did not respond to anyone for 4 days. In those 4 days, I thought more clearly than I had in years about the architecture of my family. Not the surface of it, the holiday dinners and the birthday calls and the group chats, but the actual load-bearing structure underneath. Who was expected to give? Who was expected to receive? Who was praised for needing help? Who was praised for never needing it and then quietly taxed for that self-sufficiency? I thought about every time my parents had talked about my brother's struggles with a tenderness that softened their voices, and every time they had talked about my accomplishments with a pride that always arrived with a companion question. "But when are you going to slow down? But aren't you lonely up there? But doesn't it ever get to be too much?" As though succeeding alone was a problem that needed to be solved. I went to work. I did my job. I sat in my 14th floor condo in the evenings with the west light coming across the floor, and I started to understand something that sounds simple but took me 29 years to actually feel. I did not owe anyone my home. Not because I didn't love my family. I did. But love is not a blank check. It does not mean unlimited access to everything you have built, everything you sacrificed for, everything that represents your actual life. My condo was not a resource to be distributed. It was where I lived. 3 weeks after the dinner, my aunt called me with an update. She had spoken to my parents at her initiative, not theirs, on her own terms. She had explained in her particular calm and legally informed way that what had been announced at the dinner was not a plan, it was not a commitment, and it was not happening. She had told them that if anyone contacted me about the condo in a way that felt like pressure or coercion, there were steps I could take and would take. She had told my mother, specifically, that the key situation had been handled and that it would not be appropriate to pursue the topic further. My mother apparently did not speak for a full minute after that. My aunt said she seemed genuinely shocked. Not that I had refused, but that someone was naming it so plainly, that what she had done had a name and a legal character, and that it did not belong in the category of normal family behavior just because it had happened within a family. She cried, my aunt told me. "I want you to know that, not to make you feel guilty, but because I think she does actually understand that she crossed a line. Whether she can say that to you directly is a different question." My father called me the following week, not with my mother on the line, just him. He talked for a while about nothing in particular before he got to it, which is very much his way. He said he was sorry. Not for the dinner specifically, he said, the way things came out, which is vague enough that I noted it, but he said it. He sounded tired and a little smaller than usual. I thanked him and said I needed some more time, and he said he understood. My brother found a job in late April, a supply chain role with a smaller company, decent pay. He texted me when he got the offer. I texted back, "That's really good news. I mean that. He responded with a single thumbs up, which was somehow more honest than anything else he could have said. He moved into his own apartment in May, a one-bedroom in Concord, not far from my parents. He sent me a photo of the empty living room with the caption, "First place alone in 10 years. Weird and good." I looked at that photo for a long time. I thought about the empty living room of my own first place, the sparkling water and the floor, and the crying that was not sad. I wrote back, "It gets better every day." I meant it. There is something that happens when you stop quietly absorbing the weight of other people's expectations. The weight doesn't disappear. It's still there, still real, still pressing. But when you stop being the thing it presses against, it has to go somewhere else. It finds the floor, and once it's on the floor, everyone can see exactly what it was and how much of it there was. Nobody can pretend it was a reasonable thing to ask someone to carry alone. My mother and I spoke in June, not on the phone. She drove to Charlotte and we had coffee at a place near my building. She sat across from me looking like a version of herself that had had a long time to think. She did not apologize cleanly. I had not expected her to. What she said was, "I thought I was helping him. I thought you were strong enough to handle it." She looked at me when she said it, which I give her credit for. "Those things can both be true," I said. "And it's still not okay." She nodded. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "You've always been so capable," she said, and her voice caught on the last word in a way I hadn't expected. "I think I forgot that capable doesn't mean it doesn't cost you anything." That is the closest she has ever come to saying what needed to be said. It is not a full accounting. But I have learned that with some people, the closest they can come is still something. I have been thinking a lot lately about what it means to be the person in a family who functions well. There is an invisible tax on reliability. The moment you demonstrate that you can handle something, you become the person who is expected to handle it, and eventually the person who is expected to handle everything, and eventually the person who never needs help because they have never asked for it. Nobody asks them how they're doing in the way they ask the person who is clearly struggling. Nobody wonders if they're lonely or tired, or whether the self-sufficiency that looks like strength sometimes costs more than anyone can see. I am not angry about this. I moved through angry somewhere around day 5 after the dinner, and what I found on the other side was something calmer and more useful. I understand my family better now than I did before that night. I understand the shape of their love, where it goes soft and where it hardens. I understand my mother's particular blind spots and my father's particular silences, and the way that my brother and I were each assigned a role so early that neither of us thought to question it until circumstances made the assignment impossible to ignore. Understanding doesn't require agreeing. It doesn't require acceptance or forgiveness on any particular timeline. But it does make the whole thing less heavy, which is something. I still live on the 14th floor. The west light still comes in at 6 in the evenings and crosses the floor in long, warm strips. I bought a new plant last month, a large fiddle leaf fig that I put near the balcony door, and I have managed not to kill it for 6 weeks, which is a personal record. I make coffee in the mornings and drink it standing at the kitchen counter looking at the city below, and I think, this is mine. I did this. No one can walk in here and hand this to someone else. Not because I'm hard or cold or unwilling to help people I love, but because I finally understand the difference between generosity and surrender. Generosity is a door you open. Surrender is a door someone opens for you while you're still deciding whether you want it open. I know which one I am choosing. My aunt came to visit in July. We had dinner on the balcony, takeout Thai food and a bottle of wine, and we talked until the city lights had fully replaced the sunlight. She told me about a case she was working on. I told her about a campaign I was leading at work. We talked about her daughter, who is 13, and already sharper than most adults I know. At the end of the night, she stood up to leave and looked out at the view for a moment before she picked up her bag. "You okay?" she asked. It was the same question she had asked me that night on the sidewalk outside the restaurant. This time, I didn't have to think about it. "Yeah," I said. "I actually am." She smiled. It was not a surprise smile. It was the smile of someone who had believed that answer was coming before I had. After she left, I washed the glasses and put the takeout containers away and turned off the kitchen light. I walked to the balcony door and stood there in the dark with my hand on the glass, looking out at the city. The elevator hummed somewhere down the hall. The building settled. My neighbor upstairs was not playing guitar tonight. I thought about the key on the white tablecloth. I thought about 31 people going still. I thought about how I had stood up from that table quietly, without knocking anything over, and walked out into the cold March air and called someone who answered on the second ring. I thought about all the times before that night that I had not stood up. All the smaller moments, the accumulated weight of saying nothing, of absorbing it, of being strong enough to handle it and therefore expected to. All the silent math I had done over the years to make other people's choices easier at my own expense. I was done with that math. I turned away from the balcony. The living room was still and clean, every piece of it chosen and placed with care, the room of someone who knows what she wants and worked to get it. I went to bed. In the morning, the light came in from the east first, the bedroom side, and I lay there for a while just listening to the city below begin its day. Then I got up and made coffee and stood at the kitchen counter, and through the window, the sky was the particular pale blue it gets in the Carolinas in late summer, clear all the way to the horizon. I drank my coffee. I looked at my apartment. I thought, this is mine. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, the thought arrived without any asterisk behind it.